Hey guys, Zaki Mohammed here, and you're watching CodeOmelet. This is part 2 of the art of destructuring in JavaScript. We have already seen destructuring of arrays in our previous video. You can find the link in the description below. And thank you guys for subscribing to my channel. You can like, share and comment to my videos. It will help me to grow and create such content further. Now, let's talk about destructuring objects. Similar to what we have seen in the previous video, here we'll hit these touch points to understand destructuring objects. Let's jump into coding. Here, we are starting with the same destructuring app folder, which we have already seen in the previous example. Here you can also find the arrays folder. Now I'm creating a new folder for objects and creating different files to understand different scenarios. This will help us to understand independently different situations comes with the destructuring. Let me follow the convention and put a comment first on the top. And I'm creating an object named person. Here, I just copy pasted the object person. This object having three properties in it, ID, name and age. For example, I want to create a variable name that contains the John Doe. So normally what I'll do, I'll create a name and I assign the value from the person object. Cool. And I just simply print the name. If I run this code, and if you're following me along, I'm using Node.js to run the JavaScript code. So definitely we have to come to this folder and then we have to run the command node object 1. Obviously it works and the name is printed on the screen. But this is not what we have to achieve. We want to use destructuring to get this particular name value as a variable. So how we can do this? Let's follow the syntax first. Here, the syntax is pretty similar to what we have already covered in the array part. Instead of square bracket, we have to use the curly braces followed by the object name. Cool. And if you run this code, it doesn't have any error because this works fine. We haven't done any syntactical mistake. Now I want to bring the name outside of this object. So you have to provide that property over here in between the curly braces. That's it. Now if you just print this name and you will get John Doe. Yep, we are getting John Doe. So what is happening? You are bringing this property out of this particular object. That's simple one. Now let me just bring some complexity. What happens if we have a same variable name outside already? Let's say I'm having Alan Green already present in our code. So this will definitely shoot an error. Right now, Visual Studio Code is already showing us this mistake. Like this is not possible because you're using a const variable and declaration of the same variable twice. So how we can deal with such situation? Let me create a new example for this one. I'm copying the code and creating a new file. Let's say object2.js. Copying and pasting the code. But this time I'm covering some different scenario. So what we can do if you want to create if you have a trouble such similar trouble like I'm already having variable name present inside your code, so you can give alias name. So here I'm giving an alias name as person name. Now I can even have name and person name separately. Let me run this code and show it to you. Yep, it works. And if I say I have a const variable name already which has having name Alan Green, and if I run the code, it prints person name without any error. Let me even print the name also. The name and person name. Now these two things are separated with your new variable name as alias name. So make sure you understand the syntax properly. This is not some value assignment. This is alias as a new variable name assignment. Okay. So let me just comment this out as property alias. You can understand this concept as property aliasing with destructuring. Moving forward, let me create a new file and let's take another scenario. Okay, we have the same name file. Okay, copying the code from the previous one and pasting it over here. Now this example is for default values. So a situation is very common. Let's say we are using some NoSQL database where we can expand horizontally. Suppose we don't have any salary property assigned to this object, and we have to use salary if it is there or not. We are not concerned. So let me recreate the example for you now. Let's say I'm exporting basic properties like a name and I say age. That's cool enough for a person. We already having these properties, and if you print this one, it will definitely work without any problem. If I run this code, you can see the output. Now let me say I am expecting a property name salary. We visually can able to see that salary is not there in the person object, but you can assume this data is coming from some backend or from some NoSQL or some other sources. So we are not able to judge that whether that salary property will be there in person or not, because we are specifically doing the destructuring. Now, if you print this salary on the screen, we definitely don't have any salary property present inside person. So obviously, if you are already familiar with JavaScript, we'll get undefined because this variable is not defined any value. So what we can do, if we in a situation, if we want to supply some default value, if the property is not there, I can take benefit over here of destructuring to assign a default value. So what you can do, you can use equals and assign the default value. So whatever you want to, you can assign it. Like for example, I am assigning 0 over here, and if I print the code, it works. Let's say I want to assign some other value, let's say NA. I can definitely do that. As you know, JavaScript is not strictly typed. So we can definitely achieve this. Let me bring back the 0 one. Now let's bring complexity to our code. This all are simple. Let's talk about nesting of the objects. Let me create a new file, object4.js. And this is a scenario for nested object. For example, I am having an object called address. This address looks like this. Okay. So this is having a lot of properties and a nested object property which is called as geo that further has lat and long. Let's say I have a situation, or I can say I have an example, a situation where I want to get the nested objects data directly. Now, if I do the destructuring of the address object, I can simply get the properties out of it. For example, I want to expose city out of it, so I can do simply city. If I run this code, city, it should work as we have already seen. So let's do the baby step first. Object4, it works. Cool. But I want to expose city along with lat and log. So for such situation, I want to expose nested objects property. If I want to expose geo, it will definitely work fine. We don't have any problem. It will work. But I don't want to expose geo. I want to get city and latitude longitude directly, not as an object. So what we can do, we can further drill down and destructure these objects. So carefully watch the syntax. It's a little tricky now. You have to put colon followed by again a curly braces. Here you have to specify the properties you want to expose. Let's say lat followed by long. Now I can directly use lat and long. And if you run the code, and we can discuss again, right? We can able to get it. Now you can remember that, or you can recall, this is the way we used to define a alias name. But instead of, if you just use objects over here, it will work as further drilling down the nested object. It will not consider as an alias name. So remember, the syntax looks similar, but instead of having a name over here, we have a curly braces back again. And here you can even access the properties of the nested object. So it works. Now, if you say, is geo is also available? No, definitely not. It doesn't work in that way. If you run the code, you'll definitely get an error. Geo is not defined because geo is not exposed at any cost. You are further drilling down the nested object. Now, whatever you are writing over here, those are only exposed. So city, lat, long, we actually obtained what we wanted. Now let's make it more complex. For example, we are having nested object, like object within object and likewise. So you can get a clear idea how we can further go and go deeper. Let me just put the comment on the top. Let's get started from this. I'm removing the whatever the error it was showing. Let's say I have an object called employee. I'm just pasting the object over here. This time we are having department object, and this department object further containing geo object, which we have already seen. So if you suppose the situation is the same, suppose I want to get the name and lat long of that particular employee. So how we can get that? Like not that particular employee, but the employee's department lat long, we can say. So let's do the basic step first. Let's say I want to first destructure the employee object. Simply what we can do is we can put the curly braces followed by name. And if I simply print this, it works. So if you're already good with coding, you know that do the simple stuff first and let's the complexity arise later on. Now I'm doing the complex part. I want to expose department and not the department, further geo. Let's do one by one. If I do this, it should work. Let's say it is working or not. If I run this code, definitely it's working, but it is exposing entire object of it. No, I don't want to do that. I want to expose geo locations lat long. Let's say I am first exposing geo object. Let's say this geo object is available or not. We already seen that department will not be available, only geo will be available. So if I run this code, we got geo, but we want to further drill down. So let's follow the same syntax. I want to use colon followed by curly braces. I am putting lat and I am putting long again over here. And if I run this code with lat comma long, it should work. Let's run this. It is working, right? And if you try to expose department again, you'll get the same error because department is not exposed at any cost, right? Only the destructured level, the last level properties will be exposed, not in this way. So remember that this way you can expose nested objects property. That sounds little funny, but it works. Now let's talk about our old fella array. Can we have a nested array within an object, and can we do a destructuring of it? Let's understand this. I'm just clearing out the error which we have facing previously. Let me add a new file over here. Object 6.js. And I'm just putting a comment on the top as nested arrays. Let's say I have an example where I am having object called post. And in this post, I'm having ID, title, body, and comments array for this particular post. And I'm right now having 3 comments associated with this post object. And those are having not very fruitful data, ID and body. Let's say I want to expose title and comment from this particular object. So let's follow along the syntax which we have already learned. And we have to put the object on the right side and the curly brace on the left side. And I want to expose title. Sorry, this is some testing syntax already put it on the screen. Comments. Okay. Now let me just run the code. Title followed by comments. And this is file number 7. Okay, sorry, 6. Okay, it's working. Post title is printed on the screen and the comments are also listed down. Now let's bring the complexity. Can we do the destructuring of arrays while we're doing the destructuring of an object? Absolutely yes, but let's understand the syntax properly. What I want to trying to say is that suppose I want to destructure further comments array over here itself, not by creating a new line and doing the destructuring later on. I want to do the destructuring over here also while I am destructuring the arrays. Can I do that? I just want to access first 2 values, whatever there will be in this array. So let's try and do this. I'm creating a new file again to just separate out this logic, copying and pasting the previous code. And I just want to mention that this is a destructured array, so nested destructured arrays. Yeah, cool. And let's say the object will be same. Now I want to expose the first 2 values of this comments array. So you have to follow along the syntax. Put colon followed by a square bracket. And remember that not a curly braces because this is an array. Comment 1 and comment 2. So I'm exposing specifically 2 comments out of my array. So let me just put them over here. And let's see whether these are showing individually or not. I'm executing the code for 7. Yep, we are getting first and the second comment. Likewise, we can even destructure arrays. That's look little weird, but we can achieve it. Now let's just play with functions a little bit. The get and set typical scenario. Let me just create a new file for that. Object 8.js. And starting with the convention, I'm just putting a top heading to it. So returning objects from function. Let's say we have a getter scenario and we have a function that returns an object to us. Let's say get product. This is simply doing nothing and just returning some object from, let's say, from database. And what I want to do is I want to basically do the destructuring whatever this function is returning from the DB or whatever, from whatever the sources it will be. And let me call the function on the right side, and we know that it is returning an object. Let's see the properties what it is returning: ID, name, price, and color. Let me say I want to get only name and price out of it, and if I run the code, it should definitely work. So nothing fancy, it's just a variation of it, like a function is returning something to us, so not directly an object. So this can happen in most of the situation where you are getting directly the data from some kind of function, some getter or something like that. So it is better to know how it works and we can get familiar with it. Let me create a new file for a setter situation. Object 9.js, and putting the heading passing objects to a function. This is a scenario where you can also find such kind of things with React or some other frameworks where they widely use this destructuring of objects at the parameter tray of a function. So let me just explain what I'm trying to say over here. Let's say we have a function called set product, just like get product, and here I want to supply a product to it, and I want to store it to the database. So say, let's say I just want to store to the database in this way. So product dot name will be stored, product dot let's say price, and product dot color will be stored. So I'm going to pass these properties in this product object. Let's do that. Let me create a product object outside this function, and that product object is having ID also. That is some random ID. We doesn't bother about that. Let's say this product is a bag, and the bag price is let's say 1200, and the color is black. Cool. Now I want to just call this function set product and passing the product to it. Doing nothing, not even involve any database over here, just printing something on the screen. That's it. It works. But what I want, if I don't want to I don't want to print in this way. If this function does a lot of things, if this set product doing a lot of things and it is want specific values out of the whatever you are sending to it. So instead of accessing product dot name, price, and color, what we can do, we can simply destructure it like what we have already learned, right? So what will be the syntax? Curly braces followed by the product and then followed by our variables which we want to expose. Let's say name followed by price and color. That should work, and we can get rid of the product objects accessing of the properties, right? We can directly access the variables now, and if I run the code, we'll definitely see not any problem over here. But what it is allowing us, JavaScript, is that instead of doing it on two lines, you can directly destructure the object at the time when you receive it, like in the parameter tray itself. So if you are receiving this particular object, we can destructure it over here and there and there only. And we can just reduce entire code to one line like we do with the arrow functions, right? And if I run the code, we'll get the data like what we have already getting, right? So in such situation, you can do the getter and setter and understand how it is happening, how destructuring happen in the parameter tray itself. This is the same thing happen with the arrays also, which we already covered. Now let's just wrap up our session with the rest and spread operator. Those also play along with the destructuring of an object. Let me create a new file, object10.js, and putting the heading on the top with rest parameter. Let's say we have an object called employee. It's having this many property: ID, name, job, salary, and now I want to destructure this object. Now hear me out. I want to have a clear understanding. Like I just want to expose ID and name, and all the rest of the property I want to keep inside a single object. Like I want to create a new object with all of the rest of the properties instead of ID and name. So how can I do that? I just want to expose ID name separately and keeping all the properties intact as a rest object. And I don't want to have other ID name duplicated over there. So you can use ID name first of all. That's how we are doing, and you can now use the rest parameter syntax, the three dots followed by your variable name, right? Here you are mentioning that this is others object that will contains all the remaining properties. Those are left out after removing ID and name from the employee object. It's damn simple. And if I just print ID name followed by others, it will work. If I run the 10th number file, it should show me the output, right? So likewise, you can do the rest parameter. The rest parameter usually work with the functions, but you can use it over here also. And this actually meant from the name also, like rest of the properties, right? That's why it is called rest. Creating a new file, object11.js, just to understand spread operator, how it deals with that. So if you're already familiar with the spread operator, it is also having multiple applications. Like it can also be used to create a deep copy of an object. If you want to create an object with having different reference to it, you can using spread operator. So for example, if I just want to create a department, a new copy of department instead of the same one, I can go with the spread operator. Let me just explain what I am trying to achieve over here. Let's say I'm destructuring the department object, sorry, employee first. Let's say I'm destructing name also and department. If I do this, and if you run the code, and if you just want to check what is there in the department and what is there in the employee.department, you will be fascinated that they are both the same thing. Definitely, the data will be same, but even the address will be the same. I can prove it to you just by comparing the three equals operator that also compare reference of an object. That will say true because both are referencing to the same memory location. I want to create a new copy of department that should not point to the same memory location. How can I do that? There are tons of other ways if you do manually, but destructuring offers a simple syntax with spread operator. You just have to put a colon followed by a curly braces, three dots, and again the department name. Cool. And if you run this code, I will see false because now you created a new copy of the department object over here. So remember that this is a spread operator syntax, what is happening within the destructuring. This is very useful and handy if you want to create a deep copy or a new copy of that particular similar object. Man, those are so many scenarios, but it is worthwhile to understand these many scenarios and how destructuring actually works. If you're following me along, you can simply go to CodeOmelet and find out the article over there regarding this one. So if you just go to visit the CodeOmelet and find out this article, you can see all the scenarios which we have already covered written over here in a descriptive manner. And you can go further down and you can just simply go to the Git repository and download the source code and simply start with doing coding instead of just typing all of the things you have understood so far. And if you want to further explore more, you can simply visit to the MDN. Just type destructuring assignment in JavaScript. You'll find the destructuring assignment explanation in the MDN, and you can cover some more scenarios which we missed to cover over here. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and please like, share, and comment on this video with your friends. Thank you and have a great day.